Good evening. Welcome to the Monday, June 24th, 2024 public board meeting of the Kingston City Land Bank. My name is Mike. I serve as the moderator. We do ask that members of the public limit their comments to no more than 2 minutes per speaker. And with that, I turn it over to the board chair, Mr. Nate Hennigan.
Thank you. Let's start with the roll call. We'll just go around starting to my left.
Ethel Dodds, board member.
Okay, sorry, board member. Aaron Phillips, board member.
Barbara Unides, board member.
And to Zoom,
Rebecca Holderness, board member.
Nate Hennigan, board chair. So can I entertain a motion to accept the prior meeting minutes as uploaded to YouTube and approve the current meeting agenda? Combine them on this one. Motion, I'll make a motion. Is there a second? Seconded, all in favor? Motion passes, great. Cool. So moving on to board chair announcements. Honestly, not much for me to announce this month. I think everything's kind of in the board agenda. We're cruising along, getting ready for our next project, but I would be remiss if I didn't say that we should all take a bow victory lap, closing on the last of the pilot homes, the last of the Legacy Cities 1 homes. This is a huge achievement for all of us, all our staff, the community. So thank you everyone for your hard work. Yeah. And with that, I don't think we have any members of the public here. So we'll move on to the executive director's report.
Great. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Nice to see you all. Hello on Zoom. I will start with our pipeline, just to jump right into it. So we are still considering options for one property, one hanging chad from a 2018 resolution number 172. This is 55 Rodney Street. It is a property that was offered to us for which we're still trying to figure out our level of interest based on potential title issues or property line issues. So no updates on that, but the plan could be funding could be found to clean up, but it might be a potential new construction. I don't think that it's a rehab. It's worth looking at. It keeps getting worse every time you look at it, but just didn't want to lose that last property there. Jumping forward to 2023, resolution 66, one of the two properties that we're considering our options on is soon to be a property that the Land Bank owns. So tomorrow we are closing on the purchase of 177 Murray Street, which is great. Thank you for everyone to support us in this decision. It's been a really long road, and the demo is scheduled to take place. I guess we'll get some updates at ADC around that. I don't want to jump the gun, but I will say it's worth noting that this is our first use of the ARPA grant award, funding for the ARPA grant. So it's our first time doing it. So I've been kind of nervously, on Monday mornings, we've all been talking about it. I think Kyle, Stacy, and Owen have a great plan in place for how to move forward with the ARPA funding. It's on a reimbursable basis. So we will be expending the funds when we conduct the demolition and then immediately applying to the city of Kingston. So you'll probably have some updates on the work on the property next month. And then in the following 30 to 45 days, we're hoping we'll have some great news about how the reimbursement works. Cool. The second property in that resolution is 24 Belmont. That's a vacant lot with a bunch of stuff on it. If funding can be found to clean it up, then it could be a potential new construction site. Same update as last month. I just don't want to lose it. The city is also continuing to consider some alternative methods of acquiring properties. So that is moving forward. We would probably need to wait 2 years before we could conduct capital improvements on any of those acquisitions. Same as following Supreme Court case with the Article 11 tax foreclosures. So they're kind of in the same boat, both of those types of properties. I will mention that the city is introducing to the council for next month an amendment to our disposition policy. It's a very simple amendment. It just says if the city takes properties through Article 11 tax foreclosure and or this new code enforcement, that we could be eligible to receive them under the disposition policy or follow the disposition policy and have a shot at them through an RFP or through possibly an auction. So I did note last month that the New York State budget has procedures that the city could use to potentially consider resuming its procedural process to do Article 11 tax abatements. That's actually a board package now. So there is a summary, draft summary from John Stitt, Land Bank Association's attorney, just outlining what that all means in terms of the updates to the law. Interesting. And again, as I say every month, the National Community Stabilization Trust has offered us 0 properties this month. And again, as I said, I would always update it. Pre-development still in 9 properties, no change from last month. The rehabs, the Affordable Housing Rehab Program properties, will have some updates at ADC. As will we also have a really cool presentation by Kyle about, we were asked in the finance meeting to produce a summary of our process for budgeting and requisitioning, and so that will also be at ADC. It's focusing on this program itself, but encapsulates the whole universe of how we do this stuff. Third Avenue, nothing to report other than we're waiting to hear back on funding applications, and we'll be applying to the Mid-Hudson Momentum Fund by the 28th. So that is ready to go. And we were shortlisted again for the second year for Senator Gillibrand's funds. We applied for her money. So that's my update on that. Not really sure what to do with that information other than like cross your fingers and toes. Like I don't really know what the next steps could be, but it's good to be considered for the second year in a row. Keller and Hanratty are the final 2 properties in pre-development. These are 2 vacant lots that we acquired from the city. My update around that is that we unfortunately were not successful in receiving an award under the Crossmark program through the state of New York. So this was the manufactured home, new way of doing it, new way of paying for it. It's only a pilot, and they're only going to build 3 homes with 3 different land banks, after which, if it works, there might be a whole program behind it. So
They gave a reason?
they did give a reason. The very diplomatic reason was that other applicants showed a clearer pathway for approval, meaning that the one that we presented, which was it had to go to the planning board for a variance in order to receive approval, was not as favorable as other groups that applied who had kind of an as-of-right email from the municipality saying, we welcome this. I don't have evidence that that's what they said, but it seemed a little more favorable, a little easier. To be fair, they probably are working with land banks that have done new construction. Also, it's probably part of it. So more to come on that, I guess, but that's okay. Property sales, for the first time since 2021, we have 0 property sales to report on. It's over. Franklin closed last week, as you all know. That was very exciting, and thank you, Nate, for the kind words. That was a great one. Thank you, Brian, who I'm sure never watches these, but thank you, Brian. Very helpful. Also, Kyle and I are working to try to put our arms around the timeline for the sales and marketing campaign for the next 6 rehabs. Owen has an aggressive schedule, realistic but aggressive schedule, and so we're planning around that. Probably within 60 days, we'll have that in focus and bring that back to you, and also to the committees. Potential new funding opportunities. I also have almost no updates on that, other than just to keep in everyone's mind, we have to spend 75% of the $2.9 million award that we have from LBI before we can apply for more LBI. So every month, either at finance or at this meeting, we'll keep everyone in the loop about where we are in terms of percentage. I think, Kyle, we're somewhere in the high 30s, but sorry, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but.
No, that sounds right, yep.
And so we will rapidly, once we start construction, I think you'll see that number jump pretty high. Finally, in my other category, just a little bit of housekeeping. I'll keep saying this every month. We have no board meeting, no committee meetings in August. So next month, business as usual, and then we won't see each other for a little while. I mentioned the summary, the draft summary of the real property tax law revisions that is in your board package. I'm sure you're all going to love reading it, but just for reference, it's a good document. Also wanted to mention, just on the Land Bank Association side, there will be a new president of the Land Bank Association, Jocelyn Gordon, who is the executive director of the Buffalo Erie Niagara Land Improvement Corporation, and has been land banking for a really long time. I think she's one of the originals. At the meeting on Thursday, she'll be voted in as the new president. So see what that looks like. She did say she's going to do a listening tour and set some time aside and talk to all the EDs. And if anyone is interested in being on that call, I know her slightly in passing, but she seems great, and look forward to seeing what plans she has. And then finally, I just wanted to wish Rebecca well on her trip. don't want to put you on the spot there, but just wish you the best, and that you have named Barbara as the interim chair until you return. That was it. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you, Mike. Moving right along to committee reports. So we'll start with ADC. Aaron.
Great, so we had a good meeting at ADC this month. We have some updates from Owen on the AHRP, the new Affordable Housing. What is HRP? Affordable Homeownership Rehab Program. The new 6 homes. Some discussion of Murray, Kyle's presentation about budgeting and requisitioning. So I guess Owen, I can run through the kind of bullet points that you gave us, or I can let you go through everything that's on your plate for today. How would you prefer?
Yeah, can I say a couple things and then you fill in anything that you want to mention? But we just are wrapping up so on the AHRP houses, we are just wrapping up asbestos abatement, which is kind of like the last of our pre-construction work on these houses. We've put in electric service, we've done cleanouts and testing on various things, and now we're doing asbestos abatement. So that wrapped up on Friday. Seemed to go pretty smoothly. So we've done asbestos abatement through GCs previously as an organization, but this is the first time where we're contracting it out directly as an organization, the land bank. So and we went with a provider we had not worked before and who was a lot less expensive than the next best option. So I was a little on edge last week, but it all seemed like it worked out well. So, which sets us up well for, we're shooting for a July 1st construction launch. And we're on target for that. We got 2 houses that are already under construction, Chapel and Abbey.
Already under construction or in contract?
They're under construction. Yeah.
Oh.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we're not going to see requisitions till next month, but it's happening. Yep. Especially Chapel. Chapel is the one that really, because it didn't have any asbestos in it, was able to just get going earlier than the other ones. Gran and Abbey, I expect to go for their contracts to be signed this week, and so that's the last of the Maida contracts, and those will land under what we authorized, what you authorized. Dynamism contracts are creeping along; they're on track. They're just moving at a slower pace than the other ones. So maybe next week, not this week. Just over broad schedule on those houses where the 4 of the houses are happening this year, basically construction wise, like this next 6 months. And then Grand and Hasbrook are scheduled to happen in the first half of next year. On Murray Street, we have electric disconnected from Central Hudson. We have a demolition contract signed by the demolition contractor. We're gonna get it signed on our end after we close tomorrow, and get it back to them. And we have proposals or requests out for proposals for plumbing and asbestos monitoring during the demolition, and hoping to do that middle of next month to end of next month is what we're shooting for, and excited to pull off our organization's first full whole house demolition for a house that needs it to happen and a neighborhood that needs it to happen. Yeah. Any questions about construction stuff?
Hey, Owen, we were able to get in touch with people about that sink in 28 Abbey.
I contacted them, but I didn't hear back from them. And
Oh,
it's true that I had not been harassing them, but
no, it's okay. I just was curious.
Great. Do you want to keep going on the bids then, the next thing, or do you want me to introduce them? I can introduce them, and then you can follow up with the details.
yeah, is that an executive session thing or not?
I'm sorry, I blanked out.
Do we need to do the bids, the plumbing related bids in executive session?
Well,
I think to
Yeah.
discuss like what we talked about in the
Just for a
like,
working
cap,
Yeah, yeah,
like, you know, a not to exceed number.
that makes sense.
so, could I get a motion into executive session to discuss, a pending contract?
Motion to move to executive session to discuss the contract.
Second. All in favor? All right. All right, so we're out of executive session. The final thing on the agenda is Kyle's wonderful presentation, which he gave us to ADC. He's going to give it again now. It is in the board book, if you want to look there, but also I think we can probably share screen. I don't know. But it's actually very helpful insight into their process. And so thank you, Rebecca and Mike and Kyle for working on getting on this because it was really helpful.
Thanks, Sharon. I'll pull it up on screen too. Cool. So I'm going to run through some of our project management considerations, particularly budgeting, expense tracking, and requisitions. As you mentioned, this is the presentation I gave last week to the Finance Committee. The committee thought it'd be helpful to share with the rest of the board. I'm going to try and keep this short, but feel free to jump in with any questions. I can pull up backup documents or go to more detail on anything if necessary. So just for some context, last month, the Finance Committee requested that we give some insight into how we approach budgeting, funding, and expense tracking on new projects. And we thought it might make sense to show how we approach this using the KCLB Affordable Home Ownership Rehab Program as an example. So as a reminder, the KCLB Affordable Home Ownership Rehab Program consists of the rehabilitation of these 6 homes. We have Maeda serving as the general contractor on 4 homes, Dynamism as the GC on 2, and we budgeted a total cost of $4.48 million spread across 4 funding sources, and we think this is going to take 12 to 18 months. So some juggling to do with budgeting and tracking and all that stuff. Pretty complex project. So for this project, the first step was to come up with a total project budget, which you see on the top here. We used a combination of previous project costs, quotes we'd received from work, figures from the general contractor RFPs to come up with these total costs, and we spread them across these line items. And from there, we had to look at the funding sources we had available and how to best allocate funds across this work, not only at the project level, but across the 6 homes. So for example, LBI, the Land Bank Initiative funding, that has a deadline. We need to spend it by year end 2024 and can only be used on pre-development costs, rehab costs, and program delivery costs. So we applied those funds to these categories, and our goal is to draw down those funds as rapidly as possible before pulling from other funding sources. The table below gets into some of these funding limitations and covers the requisition details as well. For example, LBI recs can be made as needed and can either directly pay outstanding invoices or can be used to reimburse the KCLB for our costs. ARPA funds can only reimburse KCLB payments, and one of the limitations, we can only apply 198,000 of these funds per house. So we need to split these funds across the houses throughout the project to maximize the spending rather than, say, backending the 975,000 into the last few homes. It's also worth noting that the LBI and ARPA funds, they're being used on other projects, as we've mentioned. For example, the ARPA funds, those are going to the 177 Murray demolition. So we had to allocate across projects with our other, our whole organizational scope in mind. So just on our process, this is how a specific requisition might work. All project invoices are stored in a project specific folder. Then I'll assign these specific funding folder, 2 specific funding folders based on the budget. So anything that needs to be reimbursed or paid by LBI will go into a specific LBI folder. And then at the end of the month, whatever items need to be requisitioned for will be submitted to their funding sources. Items paid for by the Novo funding source or the KCLB, those will be paid directly as necessary, as needed. So all these items are tracked at the project level and at the grant level, so we need to constantly track the balance of these funds. So on the right here, you see an example of a monthly requisition summary for last month. It shows about $220,000 in LBI funds were requisitioned for the project in May across those 3 uses. No other funding sources were used. And so here's an example of the grant tracking outside of the project. This is the grant level tracking. This is HCR's requisition form for LBI requisitions. The project level expenses, they've been accumulated into one document showing the total funds committed to the project and the amount dispersed to date. So very quickly, I can show kind of what this actually looks like at the project level. This is our tracking document for the Affordable Homeownership Rehab Program.
It's
These
smaller.
Are you guys seeing?
Can you zoom in a
Sorry.
bit?
Yeah, it's not the most interesting stuff, but is that a little better? See.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, so these were all the invoices we had for the month of May. Each was assigned a different line item. We have the invoices, we have the proof of payment, we have the amounts, the dates and such. And basically that gets fed into our overall property budget showing each requisition, the outstanding balances, and this is at the overall project level. This is at the home by home level. So every month we update, basically we input all of our expenses and we are able to track at a project level what the balance is at any given point in time. Similarly, we apply those, we have a similar form here where we take the same invoices, the same proof of payment, and we funnel that into our LBI requisition log. So we're able to match the expenses, across the project, across the funding sources. Yeah, just kind of gives a good snapshot of where we stand at any point with the projects. So that's it. Happy to jump into anything with more detail or answer any questions, but yeah, just thought it'd be helpful to kind of show how we approach this stuff. Yeah, thanks.
Cool. Yeah, I guess the last thing I'll say is on the disposition side of things, we're not disposing of anything right now, but because the construction will start in July, the first homes will be done later this year. We will need to start a new marketing campaign for these 6 homes in the not distant future. And so there's, I think, evolving conversations that Mike's having on kind of what marketing agent we use and how we proceed. And I don't think we have like a definitive answer yet. So probably we'll discuss this at our next meeting. Hope because we may launch it between. Well, we'll find out. So the next meeting. It's possible to launch before our September meeting, but between July and September. If not, possibly in September. So I think just TBD on that. And then with that, Nate, back to you.
Cool. Thank you, Aaron. Moving on to our Finance and Audit Committee. Rebecca. I think you're muted if you're talking.
Yeah, hi. super quick. These are the highlights. Can you see them? As always, yeah, give me a thumbs up, someone. So I can, yeah. So, you know, I just want to say that we, at every finance committee meeting, we really review all of the documents that are included in your board package with some thoroughness, and we're always impressed with the degree of magic and predictability and cost efficiency that we see all the time. So you can see from Kyle's presentation that there's a lot of very, very accurate and particular documentation. So I would just say that we take our role as a not-for-profit serving Kingston with some considerable, you know, equity and funds seriously, right? And that we take our responsibility to do that seriously. I just wanted to put that on the record. We received a pledge of, you know, 500K from Novo for our 6-town rehab. We submitted a rec number 3 to LBI 2 grant for reimbursement. You know, you'll see those reimbursements coming and going throughout any process of building, rehab, sale, whatever it is that we're doing. There's a kind of rhythm of money coming and going through. We submitted Rec 4 for 219K, also covering operating and pre-development. The staff is going to a well-deserved conference in July, and we are happy to pay for that. We hope they have a wonderful time and go out to dinner, have a nice time. So all the expenses are in line with the budget.
Okay. So.
I just think continuing education, studying, and conferences for the staff are really important. So I'm sure that you guys do too. The rest of the board is completely behind your development as a team and as individuals, right? The Meta Legacy Cities, we're trying to tie it all up. It's gonna take us a minute to finish that partnership out, and the details of that are here. We have completed the audit, more or less. I heard tell that the management letter, which is a somewhat Baroque thing, was going to be signed today. I don't know if that actually happened, but the audit is done and more or less, and we have all the feedback and the right documents, and that will allow us to go to the ABO reporting as well as any sort of tax issues. So the little train that could just kind of keeps plugging along, creating wonderful homes and somehow, you know, managing what is a very complicated set of projects in a very volatile environment financially. So amen and good job and thank you. That's what I got. Questions, thoughts? Excellent. Kyle, thank you again for your presentation. I thought it was really helpful, and I'm glad that the rest of the board got to see it as well. So thank you. Mike, we good?
Well, great. Thank you.
Okay, sure.
Cool. I'll move to accept the treasurer's report. Is there a second? Second, all in favor? Great, thanks, Rebecca. Moving on to discussion of the 2025 KCLB operating budget.
So, okay, Stacy's gonna pull it up. I'm gonna do a little dog and pony presentation on it while she's doing that. Just for context, we do this at the same time every year so that we can dovetail with our primary funder. Foundation hopefully awards us funding at the end of November and funds in December. This is how it happens every year, so we start this process in May. The budget, draft budget is then presented to Novo. Once it's made its way through the early stages, it's then brought to the finance committee, which it was last week, and the finance recommended bringing it here. So that's kind of how we got here and what it is. Just to highlight some of the big picture items. So we have a 44% increase in the amount of project level expenses that we're doing this year. We're going from 3 million to 4 million, which is great. You gotta mute here. So. You gotta mute.
Okay, there's your sound.
Like I was at a concert. Cool. So also overall a 35% increase in our operating budget as a whole. So we're doing more production on the project, on the project side, but we are increasing the overall budget. We have a new income source this year, which is the interest income from the CD that Stacy started talking to me about before she even joined the KCLB, and we got it put in place, and it's great. And it's generating. We're anticipating $25,000 in new revenue from that. Part of the balancing on that is that we don't want to invest all the money in the CDs because we do have a sweep account. As Stacy also reminds me, we have a sweep account also that's earning interest on the money that we have in the bank account, and we're going to start needing that money to pay for the ARPA funding that's on a reimbursable basis. So don't overextend in the CDs, but they're both earning interest. We anticipate $25,000. It's a great new funding source. Also,
The 25,000 is from the CD and the sweep account?
that's our interest income forecast. Yeah, it's super cool.
It's great.
Happy we have it. It's like, it's pennies from heaven type. Great. The other thing I would highlight is that we doubled our advertising and external communications line from 7,500 last year to 15,000. And this is based around some conversations for how we could kind of bolster that process and provide some additional, maybe new groups or individuals to consult with us. And so more to come on that. Could you zoom in just a little bit, Stacey? At the very top of the document, which says 125. I need some glasses. Thank you, Barbara. Okay, so year over year is 2024 is in blue, 2025 proposed is in green. Starting from the top, our office expenses are tracking flat for the year. We've increased the amount of what falls under meals, entertainment, and travel, dues, seminars, and association fees to include getting a membership in the New York State Affordable Housing. I always forget what NYSAFA stands for, but it's been around for about 30 years. I can't remember what it means, but it's the big group in the state. They have a conference upstate every year in September. We talked about it this morning. It's in Buffalo this year. It's usually in Albany, so we probably won't be attending this year, but being a member of NYSAFA also allows us to go downstate and go to the Marriott in May. They have their big annual conference, and in my experience, that is like the one that you really should go to if you're in this industry. So I think we're at the point where we have a lot to contribute and we've learned a lot from that. So that is the change, but the net effect is zero. We have an 8% increase in personnel services, which includes many different things. Part of which is a new board approved, thankfully, opportunity for us to increase or have a retirement account. So 401k account, we greatly appreciate that. And as I mentioned, the advertising and external communications has been doubled. If you could scroll down just a little bit, property maintenance, again, it's flat in the aggregate. In the specific, it's useful to note, we had talked about this, thank you, Rebecca, for bringing it up at finance. She had asked, what about the security system that we have on Hasbrook and Grand? We have these expensive steel doors that go over all the buildings, and they cost about $700 a month per building, sometimes more. Down street, it was about $1,000 a month. So when the contractor starts, as Owen mentioned, that we're signing contracts next week, the houses are all their responsibility. They want to take it off. We want to take it off. We're taking it off, and they have full responsibility for the sites. All 6 are active as well. And so we anticipate no new security expenses on the homes. If we do acquire new homes throughout the course of 2025, we probably should revisit that expense as a budget line. But for now, those are the expenses based on actuals that we believe that we'll have for the year. And going down a little bit further, as I mentioned, the total development cost category is up 44% year over year. The interest income that's shown in there is great. And finally, highlighted in orange is our request that we would make after approval of the budget if it were so granted. If anyone had any questions or anything.
The project cash equity needs is moved to gap at the bottom.
Sorry, that's my shorthand. Probably could be explained a little better. Let me just highlight. 650 prior year moved to gap at bottom. Right, so what that should say is probably removed for this year. We had set it up, the way that it was calculating was to show that if we received less money in our request, that there would be a gap to the organization. And so that was just a better way. Stacy and I talked about it. I think, Stacy, you felt that was a much better, accurate way to sort of present that, as opposed to project equity being a development cost, which was kind of smushing two things together that didn't fit as well. So we don't have a gap if this is the request that's funded. If that's not the request that's funded, I would recommend that the increase in the proceeds from pilot number, which is, for example, the sale of the home at 124 Franklin that took place on Friday, that number would go up to fill that gap. There may be other new sources to fund operating that we could identify. That would help to balance that out as well. But that's how we got there.
Cool.
Yeah.
And the operating grant, that's a separate request from the 500K they just gave us for the 6 houses.
Correct. That is what has happened in the past, just for context. So we received an operating grant last year and also got, maybe 2 years ago, got funding for the Legacy Cities program as a separate application.
And we're no longer budget, which I think is the right call, but we're no longer putting a budget line item in for any fundraising income. Because I don't think we should necessarily budget for it. That's not to say we should increase our fundraising
Totally.
prospects, but
I think we have a
wanted to flag that.
small,
Yeah, we did.
well, we have a budget for fundraising and then we have an anticipated, I believe, revenue. source.
Like donations.
Oh, we do.
or-
Donations, I think at the bottom is 20,000 if I'm remembering correct. Am I missing that?
Yeah, it's
Oh,
below grant income.
it's all the way at the bottom, revenues.
Donations. Yeah, okay, so it is in there, but it's reduced from this year.
Most come in at the end of the year.
Right. Based on what was last year's.
Makes sense.
It'd be great if it was more, but.
We'll work on it.
Do you want to discuss the social media job? Whether we think that would make a difference? I guess, whose idea was that?
To
Double it.
To double it.
Yeah.
So Stacy and I were talking, Nate and I were talking. I think there was a discussion around what it could look like. And I don't want to speak for any conversations, but thinking about trying something on a maybe a 3-month basis or a multi-month basis. Or,
Yeah, I mean, I think the plan was to sort of revisit, at least what Mark and I discussed, was to sort of revisit the proposals we got and the RFI we did before, because I think the RFI we put out didn't really reflect, I think, what we really needed, and the responses we got back, I think, were different than what we needed. So the idea was, let's put together some kind of draft and come up with a budget number that we feel comfortable with, and then ideally present that to comms to talk about in that meeting, and have like a more thorough discussion of like what that should look like and tweaking, like presenting an actual job description and tweaking it as necessary in the meeting, so there's something to look at. But that was the idea, was revisiting that social media consultant and then we can talk a little more about specifics, what that would look like.
Incomes.
Incomes, yeah. But at least budgeting for it now, so that way, when we have that discussion in comms, we can say, here's how much money we have. What kind of scope of work can we expect that aligns with that?
any other questions or?
That's for me.
I'll say the project development cost, which is this biggest single line item, contemplates the 6 rehabs and some potential new construction infill, which we are trying to organize around for commencement in the third quarter of 2025. It's kind of a vague target right now. But what I would like to do is to continue my vision quest, and anybody who wants to jump in with me, I'll be sending around a document. It's kind of a summary, just a very brief summary of why are we doing it, for us to kind of orient around, because there are, I think, some big questions to answer around that. So for example, are we maximizing unit count? Are we maximizing parking? I don't think so. Are we maximizing 3-bedroom units? Are we, all the different reasons and the different things that we're doing around it? I think getting that right now is the time to do that. So.
What is the proceeds from pilot?
So that would be the sale, the allocation of funds from the sale, because there's no other source to pay for that. So it's just designating unrestricted funding from the sale of the pilot units that we just completed the program.
Sorry, can I ask one other question about the development costs? So we have roughly 2.9 million in development costs for both the 6 rehabs and new construction. Comparing that number with Kyle's presentation, which is just the 6 rehabs, and shows costs of like 4.4 million.
About 4.5, yeah.
Is that because a big chunk of that 4.5 was paid this year?
That's the anticipation.
Okay.
Yeah. So I don't want to jinx it and say the date, but definitely by the third quarter of 2025, when we're looking to start new construction, we'll be done with rehabs. That program will be done. And it's a conservative estimate just based on percentage complete. So we shall see where that lands. We may have less spending in 2025 because we have more in 2024. The budget is the budget.
Okay. Do we have any, guessing the answer is no, or it's tied up in some of this development cost? So like, let's say that, I'm forgetting the name of it, but that program we signed up for.
Crossmile.
Not Crossmile, the one where, like, we would get like first dibs on.
Sure.
It never happened. Let's just say.
Totally.
One of those came on the market and we were able to purchase it. Is there any like wiggle room in any of these funds, or do we feel like all of these are pretty static?
As far as the revenue side, like
As far as the revenue, as far as like, do we feel like that 2.9 million development costs, like, it's definitely gonna cost that, and that doesn't count for, like, there's no flexibility there? I guess that's what I'm saying. It's not like we have, there's a 500K and just like cash on hand, just in case, like a contingency.
But can I?
Please.
speak? But there is.
Okay,
So we've managed to have most of our assets unrestricted. So that, you'll see that in financial statements when it comes out. That's what,
okay,
so back to the financials and the audits, what's the holdup? The holdup is that we're trying to work with the auditors to get that clear number. So you'll be able to see it December 31st, and most of our assets are unrestricted. So we will, it is huge. So we will have that. So you don't put that in a budget necessarily?
because I'm thinking, this is just revenues that will be earned in 2025, right? So it doesn't include any cash we currently have on hand going into 2025.
correct.
Okay,
Right.
ignore me.
No.
Okay.
So we will have money to spend if you
Yes,
spend money.
that's right. It's like, opportunities,
Yes.
like,
Totally.
Yes.
something else comes up. Yeah, we have some flexibility.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. That was all I wanted to make sure.
And we could also, there could be a way to recognize that maybe that National Community Stabilization Trust was like the way that we wanted to go, and we would pull back on the infill, for example. If for some reason there was a budgetary problem on aggregate in the unrestricted cash. As Stacy mentioned, we don't have one currently, but if something happened, if for some reason the ARPA funding took a really long time to be reimbursed and we still, we had a cash flow issue or something, there'd be other ways to meet it. My hope also is that the new LBI funding allows for the same amount of flexibility, even more. Once we're able to apply for new LBI, for the first time now it says we can do new construction. So that's another interesting way to pay for things that's not accounted for in here. So there could be new money to pay for new construction. That existing money could go towards rehabs or something. We'll see. It's very much a forecast, right? It's like,
Do we have any set, like, I know we're only halfway through the year, but do we have any sort of rough estimate of like how much cash on hand we might have at the end of the year? That's not already earmarked for other things.
Yeah, pretty much what we have on hand at December 31st of 2023, we're not spending any of that. We have
Okay.
pretty much covered it with all the grants, so. Should be the same.
we're able to be pretty flexible next year
Cool.
if we have to,
Alright.
or if we want to.
Right.
It's exciting.
Yeah, this is really a great puzzle for covering everything, all the grants.
Yeah.
Pretty
Cool.
unique, amazing,
Yeah, good work.
yeah.
I get nervous. Thank you.
Any other questions? There's hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to vote on approving the 2025 KCLB operating budget as presented.
To approve the 2025 KCLB operating budget.
Thank you. Second it. All in favor? Budget passes. Great.
Thank you.
Do you mind stop sharing it so I can just thank you. Thank you.
All right, moving right along to our comms committee. Barton.
Sorry, Rick, I'm gonna share my screen again. But quickly, how about that?
That's fine. Just when we're voting and stuff, I can't, you're very small.
So, we had discussed earlier this year that we would start a fundraising campaign around the time that we started construction of our next round of 6, and that is happening, or has happened, but is happening in July officially. And so we began to sketch out kind of the language around that, and obviously there would be kind of multiple posts, but this was just an idea for the concept. One thing that we talked about was we had talked about how the donation would go to make the next round of homes more affordable. And so, Mike, it might be helpful for us. I think we'd like to set a goal rather than leaving it open-ended.
Totally.
And so to set that goal, we kind of need to understand if we raise X amount.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm talking
I
about.
did. Kyle and I spoke about it this morning, and so we're sitting down on Wednesday to try to give that narrative and feedback. And what we were thinking, if it makes sense to you, is to say our fundraising goal is X. And if we meet that fundraising goal, the affordability of the units will drop by Y percentage.
Yes. Yeah.
That's we're gonna have that this week.
Very helpful.
Yeah.
And then we talked about some different concept types for this, how we can talk about our rehab costs. We can talk about how the affordability of homes in Kingston has changed recently. Sort of things that we don't really talk about, much, like actual data in our posts. We need some assets. Talking about photography of the homes. We also need to update, just some mechanics, update our fundraising page kind of once we set campaigns and goals. So.
Could I ask
that's what
one
we
just
talked about.
follow-up question to that? Were you talking about doing like a fundraising campaign per marketing campaign? So when Kyle and I are looking at the number side of it, would it be for the first 4 homes? Because we'll sell them in 4 homes and then 2 homes? Or would you want it, how long would you want it to go? Like
Well, I was thinking about it would be for the 6 homes.
all 6, okay. So one fundraising campaign throughout 2 marketing campaigns.
Yes.
Got it, okay, cool.
Does anyone from the committee want to add anything about the discussion?
You covered.
Okay. The other thing we talked about was the mixer. And so we were reaching out to a few places, or some of us have, whatever, to find a host.
Isn't there one place that was gonna?
Yeah, I have to follow. Sorry, I missed them.
That's all we discussed.
Cool. Moving on to governance. Also, Bart.
I was hoping Joanna would be here so that we could schedule the interview, coordinate timing. We do have an applicant that we need to interview. Her name is Casey. Maybe we need to interview her. That's the one.
Cool. Process. So then moving on to design, we did not meet last month, we are going to meet this month. Two things that are in process there, one is, I've talked to Owen about this again, but we had set a goal at the beginning of the year of trying to put together like a design book of like things that we've used in the homes that work, things that don't. We're kind of revisiting that idea in part because it's like, do we really want them all to be like kind of cookie cutter? Is it really the best idea? Plus things go out of stock and then we end up having to replace them anyway on our punch list. So sort of revisiting that idea, but we have had a couple of design questions come up, and so we've had a chance to review our new system where we're having like each of the design committee members are going to be a point person for two of the homes. That seems to be working so far. Although I'll talk about some board questions. Otherwise, yeah, that's about it for design. And with that, we still don't have any members of the public. So does anybody have any new business that they want to share? No? Hearing none? Is there a motion to adjourn? I'll make a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? All in favor? Great, thanks everybody.